We are back with API Management Hotrod. I'm Massimo. Stephane, how are you?
Fine, Massimo. Happy to meet you again for a new episode. So, what are we going to talk about today?
Let me bring back your wonderful map that I like so badly. For me, it's a polar star of this show. So last time in the previous episodes we talked about the secure branch. If you want, we look about we talk about Defender for API. We talk about OpenIDC Connect and so on. So the idea is now to move a little bit on other kind of topics or other branches. And today we would like to take a little bit a look at the topologies here in the design part, and we will see over time how the discussion goes. If you have time, just also focus on the architecture styles that are normally followed when we implement API management solutions. Here, well, let's keep interactive. Let's see what
Yeah,
it comes out of
the
our
discussion.
experience from a real life. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's try to enjoy this show.
yeah, indeed. Good. Great introduction, Massimo. So maybe, well, in that branch that you are showing, or sub branch, so we see actually when to choose Microsoft managed gateways versus self-hosted gateways. That's a bit. I've seen that in the real world sometimes a little bit of confusion about self-hosted gateways. So some people think that, or some companies think that they need a self-hosted gateway if they want to have hybrid traffic, for instance, between on-premises and the cloud. You see, so say that you have a web app, just to say something, in the cloud that needs to basically talk to a backend service on-prem, that you would need a self-hosted gateway for such type of for connectivity reasons, actually. And so that is, of course, it might not be so obvious for everyone, but that's not required, right? And so that's why I wanted to make that distinction on the map. Because actually, to do that, we can also have just a managed gateway, right? That would then be VNet integrated because you need hybrid traffic, so you need to be able to talk back to the on-prem environment. And connectivity-wise, it's okay; it works fine, right? So the first reason why the self-hosted gateway was created is actually when you want to use a single API management solution like APIM for both on-prem and the cloud, and when you have a backend to backend discussion on-prem and you want a gateway in between. That's really the primary purpose of self-hosted gateway. When I say on-prem, it could also be outside of Azure. It could also be in AWS. Say that you want to use APIM, cross cloud and so on. Then that's really the use case to say, okay, you want to avoid a round trip, right, to the cloud to come back on-prem. Because if you have two backend services that are in the same data center, if you don't use a self-hosted gateway, but you still want a gateway in between, then you would have the backend service talking to API management, right, in the cloud. So round trip to maybe Amsterdam or depending on the region you choose, and then go back to on-prem. You see, that's a bit, that's not ideal for latency reasons and so on. So that's
So,
really the,
Stefan,
yeah, yeah, tell
I
me.
would say for two reasons. One, latency, and also you don't want the dependency on the DNS, right? So on
Indeed.
external resources.
Yeah, you have this, and indeed, and latency is probably the major reason, basically.
Yeah.
But then, of course, there is another use case, which I've already seen in the real life. So is actually to use self-hosted gateways also in Azure. It's not, I think I did not, yeah, and that's more, you see, so in non-Azure and, sorry, sorry, I didn't really show it very well on the map. It's not always easy to show all the possible situations. But so if you want to have, yeah, the cloud only, sorry, you see the cloud only sub branch. So if you want to basically leverage some capability, say that you already run AKS in the cloud at scale, right, where you have a lot of backend services and you want to have an in-cluster gateway, that could be part of your service mesh, or that could be injected by Dapper, which is a more and more popular framework. Then you can also use a self-hosted gateway for this reason, right? And also scaling, because self-hosted gateway is less expensive than the managed gateways, and you can actually just run them as pods in your clusters, and you are not charged per replica, you're just charged per deployment. You see, so if you have like a Kubernetes cluster that is spanning 3 availability zones, you could have one instance per zone, pay only for one self-hosted gateway deployment, and on top it's injected into your mesh or your application landscape, especially when you use Dapper. So this is really the feature wise, and it can be that's features that the managed gateways don't have. So that's an advantage, or just scaling as well for money.
Also, just for just add something a little bit on this, so another use case that I saw but never, let's say, went to production, so it was more a sort of discovery case, was running that self-hosted gateway or on Azure container apps. So, and having your cloud gateway that was a subset of API management in the cloud as a front-facing gateway, but hosted on another platform. So to then use leverage the configuration of API management, but then using a different hosting.
Indeed. That's because something we didn't say is, of course, that the self-hosted gateway will connect to the management plane, right? So where it can pull off all the policies and so on. So of course, then you have a single pane of glass to manage all your gateways, whether it's Microsoft managed or self-hosted. They will all obey, let's say, to the same config that you have deployed. Although you can also specify that some APIs are only targeting the self-hosted gateways. You see, so you can associate APIs to gateways, but you can also have, but they will anyway connect to the same control plane. That's indeed important to or management plane. Important to specify this one. And also for those who would wonder, there is, although I've never seen that really in the real world, I mean, I never experienced it, but there is an offline, it can run offline. So if you are disconnected for a while for internet, it's not required to be permanently connected to the management plane. That's what I want to say here. So meaning that if you have an outage for some reason, then your gateway is still fully functioning. It will just not be able to get the latest policies and so on if you have changed something config, but still it will work. So no, I don't know how long. I guess forever, at least until its token expires, because it needs a token to connect to the management plane. So until then, it might. But I've never seen that in real world, because you cannot just turn off the management plane. You see what I mean? So we cannot really see how long it could live without connecting to its management plane. But at least you can expect that it should be okay if you have a temporary outage.
The configuration is cached. I mean, is pulled. So until if you restart the container, you need you need the connectivity to fetch the new configuration. But if there is no restart, that configuration, I don't know if honestly if it has an expiration. Of course,
I'm not sure. That's something that is not so easy actually to find out. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Do you anything else to add on this topology? Because otherwise, I would like to look at topology, but also the overall topology of API management. Why this, Stefan? Because these days, a lot of companies are migrating to the platform STv2, and in STv2 is all about what is your topology, which kind of networking setup you do have. So I thought it was nice to look also here at your at this repository that you let me add it here on GitHub that has been published by Stefan, where you have some topologies of API management, and we can clearly see which tier support which kind of topology. So, for example, if you have these shared tiers, today the basic V2 and standard V2 are in preview. So those shared tiers, they can have outbound connectivity, network integration on the outbound side. If you look at the single tenant tiers, like the classic ones, they have premium, basic, and standard non V2. You can go and check here, what you can have, where you can have the full network integration and so on. But so here are all the cases. My question for you, Stefan, in your experience, which kind of topologies do you use the most at your customer?
Well, at my customers, it's mostly the the full one, so fully VNet integrated. So
This one?
basically, yeah. So basically, yeah, this one, or yeah, it's this one most of the times. So why? Because network, has left the on-prem boundaries to also land in the cloud for quite a while. So and also I have a lot of customers in the banking sector and so on. So they are not really, they are risk adverse, let's say. So they typically want to isolate a maximum of things from internet. So then premium allows you this to have fully private inbound, fully private outbound, and dev, of course, in non-production environments for cost reasons, of course. And dev anyway supports all the features except the multi-region, which is another discussion, you see. But for network topology, that's typically premium. And then, of course, typically you also have app gateway or something else, because you have some
Yeah,
customers that use other non-Azure, let's say,
yeah,
components,
F5 or any other.
F5,
Yeah,
Barracuda, whatever you want as a web application firewall. But let's say if you stick to Azure, application gateway is the only one today. Yeah, that might change, but today that can see the private inbound VIP of API management. Okay, so that's why if you go up a little bit, you could see front door, but you see it, front door, the red, oh, it's actually already visible. The red dots between front door and Dev Premium is because today you can do that, but then your APIM Premium needs to be VNet integrated in the external mode. So meaning that you still have a public inbound VIP. Of course, you can lock it down to front door only by combining some controls. But let's say today front door cannot see a fully private APIM, whether you try
it's,
to use private endpoints or whether you want. So that's why App Gateway is still dominant today. And sometimes, I've already seen this, and actually more than sometimes, what you even have often is, for instance, an F5, really making the ingress, so the F5 is public facing, App Gateway only private listener, and then App Gateway to APIM. Of course, it means a lot of hops. So when a request comes in, but in some large corporations, they are willing
yeah,
to pay the price, let's say, of that first running all these services, and also the extra hop that you have. But in that case, of course, if you do that, you run app gateway without the WAF policies, yeah, because the
yeah.
WAF is already handled at another layer.
I'm also facing most of the time, as you said, this kind of topology, and so the fully internal VNet mode is to me is the classic. I call it classic somehow because it happens so often.
Yep.
Enterprise customer, they are looking for that network isolation, that clear boundaries. I also have a situation with front door, especially when you need to leverage that CDN feature and that caching at the edge. And here you have you can apply some filtering on VNet, and also using some
Yep.
information that are coming from door. But clearly, as you said, it's on private. Sorry, it's going over the public internet, so there is no strict network connectivity. And unfortunately, PLS, so private link
Yep.
service, cannot be leveraged, as
Yep.
I think
Indeed.
you are pointing here in your article.
Yep.
But
Indeed.
one more thing, so I have mainly these two things, these two topologies, but at Codit, the company where I'm working, we are doing a lot of cloud integration, so enterprise application integration in the cloud, meaning leveraging a lot logic apps since a lot of years. And logic apps per se, it's a serverless kind of service until last year or so. The network integration was not available, so there were no, like the logic app standard right now, network
Yep.
integration. So most of the time, so for a lot of customers, we have situation where the inbound HTTP endpoint are hosted by services like tiers like standard.
Yep.
And
Yep.
for that kind of cloud serverless integration,
Yep.
logic app and Azure function based, most of the time we
Indeed.
have standard because
No,
we
no,
cannot
indeed.
leverage the.
Yeah, indeed. Anyway, indeed, with logic apps on the consumption tier, you would not be able anyway to talk to a private resource. So then, indeed, then it doesn't make sense to integrate that with. If it doesn't make sense, it could make sense, but it's not worth paying the price of a fully private. If anyway, ultimately, it needs to be in front of something. If it needs to be publicly available, I would just say maybe because people might also wonder why not exposing APIM directly to internet, because that's also
That's a good
possible.
point. And you know what? That's a question, Stefan, that a lot of time customer ask me, why not I cannot put a single API management front facing, or is it a good practice or
Yeah.
not? So you were saying, what is your opinion?
Uh, well, actually, you can, of course, technically speaking, there is no issue. So APIM supports this. So even if you take the premium in external mode, then okay, it can integrate with private backends and so on. And then you have a public VIP that is on the internet. And if you do that, even you have, let's say, NSG still, so network security groups, to control what can go hit the inbound VIP. But let's say even if you take the full consumption tier, just to say something fully public, right? Well, it works. The only thing, of course, that you lack is actually a WAF, web application firewall. I mean, that you lack, that you really want to make sure that uh, traffic is first inspected by a web application firewall before hitting your gateway. So that's, you don't have a WAF built in, let's say, in the APIM. On the other hand, that's always something I tell also customers. Of course, APIM is aimed at, of course, proxying APIs, right? So the number of vulnerabilities is, of course, smaller than if you have a full-blown, web app, right, where we have browsers, cross-site forgery, that kind of attacks. So, but still, so if you want to have some certainty that you have that you are protected against also API type of attacks, which are also included in the OWASP top 10, although there is a specific OWASP version for APIs. But then the WAF will give you this certainty, and typically you would share a WAF with web apps and with APIs. You see, so you don't need a dedicated WAF just for APIs. So that's what you lose if you expose APIM directly. And another thing that you could lose is more if you have like a global API deployment, active, right? Multi-continent, for instance. If you have APIM that is directly taking the traffic, then you will rely on APIM's built-in load balancing algorithm. You see, which is actually leveraging Traffic Manager behind the scenes. So meaning it's a DNS-based load balancing. So it's not really proxying traffic, and it's DNS-based. But say that you have two continents, and at some point you need to add a new country, right? That's not yet there, and you don't want to enable third continent, but for cost reasons or whatever. Well, with a service like Frondor, you can completely rule how you want to load balance traffic. So you could, for instance, say if the originator is from that country and maybe you have regulatory reasons, whatever, you can say, okay, then this one you always have to route it to, for instance, West Europe, right? If you have only APIM, then you will be limited or restricted to what the built-in load balancer can do. So meaning it will always take the fastest let's say backend, right? Which can be fine, but if you are forced to have another rule, then you can't with APIM only.
Yeah. And there is another thing that is very related to what you were saying is like customer, an example of that happened to me some times ago. Customer where they have internal and external APIs on the same API
Instant.
management.
Yeah.
Okay, if in this case it should be a premium with a leg into the internal network. Over there is a sort of risk, like because we are human, we can do a mistake, something that is
Of course.
internal can accidentally be turned. Of course, should never happen in production, but you never know. So it's always, if you have something in front like application gateway or front door where you can have a sort of convention, a path
Yeah,
based
pass-based.
routing,
Yeah, indeed.
or something that by default is not exposed, you have an additional layer of security, right?
Yeah,
So that make
indeed.
you
It's
sure
a
that
safety net to indeed avoid expose accidentally an internal API. Although, to be honest, but that is not good for cost. But I even recommend to split completely, right? If you can. So what you have, what I call B2E API, so what you use for yourself, and really what you use for B2B or B2C. Then I try to split because, as you said, well, mistakes can happen, so we never know. On the other hand, indeed, you have multiple environments, so it's unlikely that you don't see it up to production, but we never know. So if you
Yeah,
can afford, it's even better to split, but then you have to pay multiple instances.
exactly. At the end, it's a matter of cost.
Indeed.
I value so badly that isolation, as you explained so well. But that's API management, this service that we love. We know that at the end of the day, in a premium tier, it's not the
No.
most let's say cheap
No,
services.
it's not a cost-friendly solution. But on the other hand, it's a full-blown service. Because
Yeah,
honestly, I already had some discussions to say, okay, guys, it's quite expensive API management if you compare to some others. But actually, it depends to what you compare it. So if you have like, in the Kubernetes world, you have a lot of cloud-native solutions, and so, but some are more just gateways, you see. So okay, they will help you with API throttling, with GWT validation, that kind of stuff, but it's not a full-blown API management solution. So really including the management piece, so versioning APIs, so I don't know, bundling that into products and so on and so on. So yeah, it's indeed not cheap, but you also have a lot of stuff in there. So
yeah.
uh,
It will also come, of course, as a PaaS service with all the management done for you under the hood. So,
indeed. So yeah,
okay. So, Stefano, we are at 21 minutes.
yeah,
So we came up with a good resolution to have a shorter, let's say, episode. So
yeah.
I think that maybe the what we were saying at the beginning to talk about
Yeah.
this part. Sorry,
It should be for the next episode. Yeah,
the
the architecture styles. Yeah, because if we start this chapter, yeah, probably we'll spend another 10-15 minutes on it. So that would then be a bit too long for our episode. So let's
okay.
talk about this one later. No issue.
Yeah, I think it's a 20 around 20 minutes is the right size for this kind of
Indeed. So that
field.
people can watch this over lunch and still lunch at the same time. You see? So,
Uh,
or at least,
yeah,
it's not
that's
too long.
wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay.
Okay, I want to thank everyone that is looking this channel that will look the previous episode and it will follow us in the future. So voila, that's everything for today. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you, Massimo. And thank you all. And see you soon then. See you. Bye bye.
Bye.